Hello, a very good morning to you all. I hope you're doing well on this very bright February morning. So my first live of February, which I'm going to be doing some little cuff bracelets with you today. So we've got some beautiful satin pearls in a range of colours and two different colours of wire. We've either got 3 on silver or 3 on a lovely kind of champagne-y kind of gold or light gold, I think it is. So I'm going to use 2 gauges of wire today. I'm going to be using a 0.8, which is a 20 gauge wire. And you can, if you want, go up one and go a little bit sturdier with that if you wanted to use an 18 gauge wire, like a 1mm. And that's going to be used as the frame. And then I have a lovely, very fine weaving wire, which is a 0.3, which is a 28 gauge wire for those of you who work in that metric. So I'm going to be using the beautiful little satin pearls, and I'm going to be making lovely little cuffs with you today. I'll take you over to the website very shortly, and I'll show you the different colour choices. We've got a really good deal on for you today. They're a bargain, and they're very straightforward and simple to make. So if you haven't done wire before and you're looking for a nice beginner project, something to start you off, then this will be ideal. So I'll just say hello to you all. Good morning to Anastasia. She's saying peace and love to you all. Hello to Helena all the way in Sweden. Thank you so much for joining me. Good morning to Jan. Oh, she said, good to have you back. Thank you very much. Thank you for being patient with me last week. Camille says, good morning, Natalie. I hope everything went okay last week. Dull and grey here again. Oh, it's beautiful and bright here today. Last week was sad, but beautiful. So yeah, thank you so much for all of your love and condolences that you've sent me. It's very much appreciated. Good morning to Lisa. Hello to Elaine. Oh, she says lovely to see you back. And Catherine as well, saying good morning to everybody. So I've got loads of you in already, which is absolutely wonderful. I'll take you very quickly over to the website. Before I do, I've got a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not happy with the photographs that are there, and I've taken them, but they honestly look so much better, I think, in the flesh. So I will take you down on the mat and you can have a proper inspection of them as well. These are made, so they are cuff bracelets, so there's no clasp with them, and because I'm using the wire, you can adjust them to fit whatever wrist size really you want to. So they are a really comfortable wear, and the satin pearls are just beautiful. Good morning, Pauline. Hello to Robin. How are you doing? And good morning to Anne. So if you are new to us and you're not sure where you can get your hands on our products, then head over to totalybeads.co.uk. We do ship worldwide. We are based in the UK, so our measurements are UK measurements, but I'll always try and convert them for people who are maybe watching in Sweden or the US or whatever. I'll always try and do centimeters and inches and different gauges. So if you head into the video tutorial section here on our main page, there's lots of different ways you can get into it. You can click on the drop down menu at the top here and head into the video tutorials category, or you can head into the video boxes here. They're both the same. Now we lay them out so all of our recent projects are at the top, but you can search by type, by bead, by all sorts of different things. So for example, if you know you want to do a wire project, you can search by wire. If you know you want to make a bracelet, you can search by bracelet or necklace or earrings, whatever it is. If you've got a particular component, so you might be thinking, I really want to use a seed bead, then you can click on the projects in that way too. We have hundreds and hundreds. I think I've probably delivered way over 300 tutorials for Totally Beads, and it's not just me doing them. We've got, of course, got the wonderful, talented Laura, and we've got Kitty, who is, started the whole thing. So we do have different skill sets. So Kitty's the person you want to see if you want to do a stitch project. Laura's fabulous at chainmail. We both dabble a little bit in wire. So I'd say I'm a bit of an all-rounder, but there's loads there for you to find. You can have a little look at, scroll on through. Today I've named them the Genevieve cuff bracelet. So each of your kits today are a fabulous £3.99, and that's going to be enough to make a cuff bracelet in all of these different colours. So we have the Genevieve cuff bracelet in amethyst, which is kind of like a purpley colour, really pretty. That's on the silver. We've got a golden olive on the gold coloured wire. We've got a beautiful lemon, which I think is perfect for kind of bridal jewellery. We've got a moss green, we've got a vintage rose, and we've got a violet. By all means, you can multi-buy if you wanted to. Each one will make one bracelet. But if you wanted to add some additional beads into your basket, or you wanted to add, different colour, you might think, I've got enough wire, I just want to do one, but I'd really like to mix, say, that beautiful golden olive with the moss green. Then you can buy those extra beads to add in as well. They do look beautiful mixed. So I'm just doing 3 rows on a bracelet. It's a bit like channel setting, I suppose. But those base wires are going to create a very simple channel for those beads to sit into. So they're all the same, apart from the different colours of beads and the different colour of wire. So if I head into vintage rose, you see you're going to get enough to make one bracelet, and I'm just going to row them up like this. The satin pearls are absolutely beautiful. So you're getting a full strand of your satin pearls. We've got the copper wire, which is colour coated in either the silver or the gold, depending on which one you choose. And that's a 0.8mm wire, which is a 20 gauge. I'm using about 9 inches per strand on that, so 18 inches in total. So 2 lengths of, I think that's 23 centimetres. And then I've got the 0.3 copper wire as well, which will be in the matching colour, which is a 28 gauge wire. And I'm using quite a lot of that. I'm going to use about 200 centimetres. If it's more comfortable, you can use 2 lengths of 100 centimetres. So that would be 2 lengths of 40 inches or 78 inches, there or thereabouts, of the 0.3 28 gauge wire. And I'm using the satin pearls. I'm using 4mm satin pearls. The colours on these are absolutely beautiful. I'm going to take you down on the mat. They've got this gorgeous satin finish. So they've got like a matte finish to them, but they're just absolutely beautiful. One of my favourite beads on Totally Beads website, I think, to work with. I just think they're very gorgeous. So they're your colour options today. £3.99, enough to make one bracelet in either the violet, the vintage rose, the amethyst, the golden olive, the lemon, or the moss green. So have a little look on the website, see if there's something there that maybe takes your fancy. Hopefully there will be. Let me just make sure I can get my screen back on. Here we go. Do apologise. I'm still getting used to this new kind of system, and I will take us down onto the mat. So if I click on here and slide that up, come on, there you go. So it's a really straightforward make. These are the beautiful kind of blue colour. I'm going to demo with these today. If you can see, these pearls are just gorgeous. You can see that kind of mark on them is literally just my ring light. So that little kind of C is the reflection on my ring light. They're really pretty. We've got this beautiful kind of mossy green colour. These are your amethyst, and so you can see it's different to the kind of violetty colour we've got there as well. And then this beautiful golden colour, and then these are absolutely gorgeous. This just screams bridal to me. Now they're a really easy make to do, and if you want to strengthen the wire, I am using a 0.8. If you wanted, as I say, you could use a 1mm wire with that, I suppose, instead. But you can strengthen up the ends if you've got a little hammer and block. Then you can use that, or you can use your like a pair of chain nose or flat nose pliers, and you can just gently kind of push down on the end. And what that will do is that will kind of change the kind of molecular structure in your bracelet, just to kind of harden and flatten out those wire ends. But as you can see, we just make one flat piece of bangle, and then we will shape it. So you can shape it with your fingers, you can shape it with a bracelet mandrel, or you can shape it around the wrist as well, and that will just close over and fit really comfortably, and they're very touchy feely. Joanne says, oh, they're gorgeous. Good morning to Judith. Hello to Joanne. Hello to Mina. I hope I've not missed anyone. Hi, Carol. Hello to Mary. How are you doing? She's waving at me. Lots of people sending lots of love. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Yeah, Anastasia, it was my wonderful father-in-law, James. He passed away on Christmas Day. But we weren't able to put him to rest until this week. So they are the beautiful bracelets. I just absolutely love the colours. As I say, if you want to mix and match them, they'd look gorgeous mixed together. Obviously, this kind of ivory colour is going to go gorgeous with everything. I think these would look particularly beautiful together. I think these would look beautiful together. So if you want to add in extra, you absolutely can. You can multi-buy on the full project, or you can just add another one of the satin pearls into your basket. These are the 4mm ones that I'm using. Okay, let's get making. So I'm going to take 2 lengths of my base wire, which is what I'm going to make my channel in. So that is your 0.8. And I've cut about 23 centimetres, which is about 9 inches on each. Now, 1 full strand of the gorgeous satin pearl beads that you're getting, which will be like so, we'll probably make a full length of about 6.5 inches, but I'm going to be extending onto that because what I want to do is I want to be adding these little curls at the end, which are what we're going to be able to kind of mold to our wrist. So it doesn't have to come and cross over each other. It can just sit kind of open on the back. You can, of course, if you want to create like an extender chain or add a clasp and make additional links onto that if you want to, or you can make a larger bracelet. So this one here I've made is very large. It's too large for me personally, but you can see if you want to, you're just adding on more of those pearls. So I'm going to start off with my 2 lengths. Now, if you want to, you can curl these at the beginning or you can curl them at the end, whatever works easiest for you. But what you must do is straighten out your wire. I think it just makes everything so much easier because we want these to run parallel together. So you can see there is a little curve in it. You can run it through your fingers. The wire is nice and soft and malleable enough to do that. Or if you've got some nylon coated pliers or whatever wire straighteners of your choosing, then just run that through and make sure you've got like any kinks out of the wire and that they'll sit nice and flat together. And then I'm going to cut about 200 centimeters, which is about 78 inches of the 0.3. That's the fine weaving wire. If it's easier for you, if it's more manageable, then by all means cut 2 lengths of 100 centimeters or whatever instead. It's really easy to just add on additional wire because all we're doing is just anchoring that on with 3 wraps. So you can do that at any point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 piece of my wire to begin with, and I'm going to measure down about 1 inch. So if you've got a ruler handy or a tape measure, measure about 1 inch from the end of the wire. And then with my 0.3, I'm just going to anchor that on. So to do that, I'm just going to leave a small tail end, and I'm just going to wrap that wire, that 28 gauge wire, 3 times around the base wire. So when I'm wrapping round, if you can see there, maybe I could have done the weaving wire in a different colour to show up a little better. I'm just creating those wraps next to each other. They're not overlapping, they're just sitting neatly next to each other. Now this will slide up and down, don't worry. I want to gauge about 1 inch from there and I can move that accordingly. All I'm going to do then is take that little tail end that we use to anchor it on, and I'm going to trim it off. So I'm going to come in with my flush cutters, my wire cutters, and I'm just going to trim off that little end, put that to the side, and then with a pair of pliers, I'm going to use my tweezer nose pliers. You can use chain nose pliers, whatever you want to. We're just going to make sure we've tucked in that end. We can check it later, but we don't want any little sharp bits sticking up or snagging. So we're just going to tuck that in. Again, if you want to keep referring back to your ruler, you can see that's moved. So I can just slide that back into place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of my wire. Now I am using 200 centimetres of this. It's a little curly because I folded it over before I started, and I might regret doing that. So I'm just going to kind of untangle my wire. I am using a very long length of this. As I say, if it's easier, by all means, use a shorter length and just add that on as you go. So let me just straighten this out. I want this fairly straight as well. I don't want any kinks in this wire if I can help it, and I will straighten it as I go. Now the trickiest part of this is starting off. Once you've anchored your first few rows on of your beads, it gets really, really simple and it will all firm up. So what I'm doing is I've just straightened out my wire. If there's any little bends in it, again, I'm just going to run that through. You see my nylon coated pliers will make sure that I'm not marring or scratching the wire, just gently, just running that through. And I'll do the rest of that with my fingers as I go. So once I've got my wire attached, I'm going to add on my pearls. Now, if you're doing two colours, add it on in the order that you want to. So you might decide I want each row to be a different colour. I might want to go for the gold, the green, the pink, the blue, whatever. Or you might just want to change that middle row. So in that case, you just add on one colour, the other colour, and then the original colour. You can do whatever you want with this. I'm just going to do one solid colour of that beautiful bluishy colour, which technically is called violet. But for me, so this one is our amethyst. Where are you? There. This one is the violet, which I think is a little bit more blue. And then this one here, just to differentiate between them, is the vintage rose. So you can see they are different in colour. And if you're not sure which is which, that's them. So I'm going to go for the violety blue. And I'm just going to add on 3 of my gorgeous 4mm satin pearls. And this weaving wire is lovely. It's still strong and sturdy, but it's very fine and delicate all at the same time. So I'm going to slide my first 3 pearls up onto my weaving wire. Again, they will move up and down. It's okay, I can adjust. And then I'm going to take my top wire and I'm going to position those beads in between. So my channel that I'm creating is going to be the width of those 3 beads. So I'm just going to bring that weaving wire over the top. You can anchor this on any which way you want, if you're coming from behind or above it. But I'm just going to wrap that round 3 times. And you can see those wires are slightly spread out. I want them nice and tightly next to each other, so every now and again I am just going to compress that weave. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that wire around the back, nice and smooth, and I'm just going to lay it very close next to those beads. So I'm holding both of those wires between my thumb and my fingers. If you've got a ring clamp, you can place it in that if that's easier. And I'm just going to bring that wire without any beads, and I'm going to bring it through the middle. And these will cross over, again, that's okay. You can move them out. So the first few rows are the most difficult because these wires are going to want to move. But they will all start to kind of form a nice position, a nice row in between. And I'm going to wrap that around the bottom 3 times so that my wire is going to come back down. And I will just keep gently smoothing out that wire. But also when I first put my beads on, I'm going to pull it quite taut because I just want the space between these two wires to be the same distance as the pearls. So the more pearls I put on, the more it will just widen that out to be that same gap. You can see now that these have started to move. So I'm just going to adjust slightly. So I'll lay it flat on the table. I'll gauge where is the 1 inch starting point, and I can just slide that up where I need to. I want these wires to be roughly about the same, so I want it to start in 1 inch from that one as well. I'm then going to add on the next 3 pearls. So I'm taking the end of my wire. In fact, I'm going to take a few of these off, I think. So in terms of tools, I don't need many tools at all. I'm going to use my round nose pliers at the very end. I'm going to use my wire cutters. I'm going to use my wire straighteners. I can use a hammer block if I want to, but mostly it's just going to be all done, all controlled with my fingers. So I'm adding on those next 3 beads, and they are going to come and sit right next to them. Again, just position my wires accordingly. So the distance between that wire, those 2 wires, always running parallel, will be those 3 beads, and I can adjust these as I need to begin with. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing those beads in with my fingers and my thumb, so I'm getting that distance nicely, and then I'm going to pull that wire fairly taut, so wrap 3 times around the top, and then bringing it once around the bottom with no beads on, to wrap 3 times there. And that's just going to firm it up, and those wires will form nice little wraps and loops. And then as I go, I'm just going to tighten those up. So I'm just going to give them a little bit of a pinch just to compress, so my weaves are sitting nice. And I'll do that again at the bottom as I go. Again, don't worry too much about them moving up and down. We can still slide them back into place. But that is all it is. It's just repeating that over and over until we get the length that we need. So I tend to make about 6.5 inches, maybe 6 inches or so from my wrist size, in terms of the length of the beads that we've got. So I'll keep measuring it against the ruler before I then decide to add on my curls at the end. So I'm bringing that wire up. Those 3 beads are just going to sit in the middle. If it's easier, you can splay the ends out just to get that wire in between. But the more you add on, the more these wires will kind of open out to the size that you're after. So a bit of a gentle pull on that, just to make sure that wire is nice and firm around the top. Wrapping around 3 times, once behind the back. And then 3 times on the bottom. And again, just keep running that wire through your fingers. You might find occasionally it'll make a little loop. If it's easier, use a shorter length of wire. You've got more than enough to make the size that you require, but because we're wrapping 3 at the bottom and 3 at the top, if you need to anchor on new wire, you can absolutely do that, no problem. So adding on my next set of 3 beads, sliding them down, position. Again, you can see there's a slight stagger with the wire, doesn't matter too much, I can adjust. And then I'm just pinching between my finger and my thumb, just to wrap that wire around the back, and then 3 wraps around the bottom. So it's not a very long make, it won't take you too long to complete this. It's nice and repetitive. You don't really have to count your wraps and your weaves, you're just wrapping it around those base wires, just to give that bracelet a little bit of stability. The beads will add that stability as you go. The next 3 beads are going to come on, and then they will be placed over the top to sit nicely in between that channel. Pull it quite taut for that first one. You see, I'm just taking it, and just by pulling it, it's falling into the place that I want it to. So 3 wraps around, keeping that wire nice and straight at the back. And 3 wraps around the bottom. So if you need to, you can just check and think, okay, I need to adjust a little bit. If you need to pull that top wire, you can do, just to get them all in line. And if you want to start gathering those, you'll see, just occasionally, we'll just compress those little wraps, just to neaten them up by giving them a little squeeze. And you can do the same on the bottom as well if it needs to. The ones at the top seem to have moved a little bit more than the ones on the bottom. And if you look at the back, just keeping those wires nice and straight, just to kind of keep them in position. So adding on my next 3 beads, I tend to take them off the strand together and then just slide them on. If the tip of your wire gets a little bit bent, you can trim a tiny section off, or you can just straighten that out with your fingers as well. So sliding the beads all the way down, lay them over flat, and then just by pinching them between my thumb and my finger, what I'm doing is I'm making sure they're sitting flush in between those wires. So they're not poking out, hanging over one side or the other side. They're just sitting nice and neatly in between them. 3 wraps around the top. If you feel the need, compress it to neaten it up. Taking the wire around the back and wrapping another 3 times. So you can see now these wires are starting to sit where I want them to. They've got that distance, those beads are, keeping them in line. You can also gently lay it on the table and just push down if you want to, just to make sure that they're all sitting flat and they're all neat, laying next to each other. Then on with the next beads. So I'm taking 3, just popping them on to the end of my 0.3 28 gauge wire. You could possibly do this with a 0.4 as well, but I think the 0.3 just gives it a very neat and delicate look. But you can see, I'm pulling fairly firm on that. As long as I'm not putting too much tension on that, I'm not bending these. I want these nice and straight and nice and parallel at all times. But the wire is strong and sturdy enough that I'm just bringing it round, and then a little pull just to pull it into place. So that will then lift up. Beads will sit next to it. Onto the table or your work surface, and that will help everything stay into position. I do think this will look lovely with a mix of colours. You could put this with the this kind of violety blue along with the, well, it's called lemon. I think it looks more ivory than lemon to me, but the kind of ivory lemony white one I think would be beautiful bridal jewellery. You've got your traditional kind of whitish colour, but then you've also got your something blue. Bringing that down and wrapping around the bottom. So each time I'm bringing that wire down the back, You can see it's staying fairly straight. It's just sitting, they look like little peas in a pod. And all that's doing is just firming up that channel that we've created. If you are going to compress your wires, be very gentle with them. We don't want them to snap. We just want to kind of make sure that they're sitting nice and flush. I don't tend to straighten out the back. I think just the tension will kind of do that. But I do tend to neaten the top and the bottom ones up just as I go. And obviously the tighter that is wrapped, the less movement that will become in these beads and wires. Adding on another 3. And if you are mixing your colours, as I say, you could do one row of one colour, one row of a different colour and kind of alternate between them. That would give a very different look. Or if you wanted to just change the colour of each bead or just the middle bead to create a different effect with the rows. You could be very clever and you could create like a chevron effect in it. You could do whatever you want. I like using just the one black colour though, I think it looks lovely. Darlena, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, my love. She says, I really love this, so simple, I can't wait to make some of these. Oh, thank you. They are the most straightforward. Just going to get rid of that one because it's a little bit peculiar in shape and we want this nice rounded shape of the bead. Because if they're all the same size, so if I'm using 4mm beads, all the same size, that lovely rounded shape is just going to keep the width the same. If, for example, I was using, one random bigger bead, then I'd have to use that random bigger bead all the way across because we need these to stay parallel. And the shape of it is just formed by the size of the bead. But it is a really straightforward kind of technique to do channel setting because you've got the drill hole in the bead, so that wire is just helping, that weaving wire is just helping secure it to the frame. And they're really comfortable wear as well. It sits nice and flat on your wrist, so you do forget you've got it on. If, of course, you want to add extra security, then you can add like a safety chain or you could add a clasp to it if you wanted to. Double up the clasp, so I had one on the top row and one on the bottom. But because the wire's nice and soft and malleable, you can just shape it to your wrist really easily, and it will sit nicely. And the loops that we're making at the end are comfortable because they sit flat against your wrist as well. So bringing that wire around the bottom, you can see when I've added it on, I just tend to run it through my fingers. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but we don't want any loops and kinks in it because obviously it will weaken the wire as we're working with it. I don't find it too difficult to work with this length, like a 78 inches or how many centimeters is that? Oh, sorry, just wobbled my camera. 200 centimeters for me is quite comfortable to work with. It's just working under the camera really that can be a little bit difficult to start off with it. So you can see these wires are kind of moving out a bit. So if I position my beads in, you can see there's a little bit of space between the top and the bottom. So when I'm bringing that weaving wire around, I'm pulling it down when I create that wrap, because I want the wire just to sit above it and I don't want there to be too much movement. I can move the beads up and down, but I don't want to be able to move them that way, if that makes sense. So they can slide across, but we want to keep those nice and flush. So 3 wraps down towards the bottom, just supporting it with my finger and my thumb as I go. 3 wraps around the bottom, Keep laying it flat. Again, if you keep needing to check, you might find that these are moving up a little bit. You can just slide them down. Doesn't have to be exactly an inch, but we want to make sure we've got enough space to create that curl. So you can either gently pull on the wire or you can position the beads. It's probably easier to just slide the wire up and down. Obviously, the more you add on, the less easier that's going to be to move. So just keep checking when you're at that kind of beginning stages of your first few rows that you're happy with that. Hi Yolanda, hope you're doing well, not seen you in a little while. Thank you all for joining me today. Hope weather is okay wherever you are and life is treating you well. It's a beautiful bright day today. Finally finished our cold snap, I'm hoping. So again, placing them in the middle, keeping them in place to begin with my finger and my thumb. If you need to compress, just a gentle little pinch. And all I want to do is make sure that those wires, when I wrap it round, they're not kind of layering up on top of each other, they're just sitting next to each other. So if you can see, bringing the next one round, guiding it down. Don't know whether I'll have time to make the full cuff, but we'll see. It is just the same repetitive, placement of beads. So laying the wire over the top, beads fit into the channel. The wire comes around that top base wire, back around the back, and 3 around the bottom. Just make sure these are staying nice and straight. You can see it's kind of how it looks along the back. You know what I've done? I've missed 3 wraps there around the bottom. It's not the end of the world, but that's why that's not sitting quite flush. There should be 3 wraps there. So what I could do if that happens, if I really wanted to fix it, I think we'll be all right. But if I really wanted to fix it, what I would do is I would just cut off, because I think if you unravel the beads, you're going to have the kinks in the wire. So I'd cut off the last channel that was okay. I would tuck it in and then I'd just reattach the wire. It's a little bit frustrating, but it's not the end of the world. I say it's the simplest of makes, and then I still make a mistake. I think I was just distracted while talking. So place the beads on, 3 wraps around the top, bring the wire behind, and before you add the next beads on, 3 wraps around the bottom. Lifting that wire back up, adding on the next lot of beads. You can see it gets easier to work with, more manageable as that wire decreases, that 0.3 as we attach more on and as we attach more beads on. Three around the top, no beads on to bring it round the back, 3 around the bottom. Rachel says, arriving late due to have visitors, so I've missed the beginning. You've not missed too much, Rachel. It's literally just doing a very simple kind of channel satin technique with beads. So using 2 framing wires, the 2 base wires, to create the frame of our what will be a bangle. and then just anchoring those beautiful satin pearls on, which are 4mm in size, using the 0.3 or 28 gauge wire. By running that through the beads. The beads are only ever going to be on that weaving wire. And never sliding them. You could do, if you're, if you wanted to, you could maybe slide a bead on to the main frame as well if you wanted to change up the design slightly. There's no rules with making. You can do what you want. You can experiment with it. And you can fill whatever shape you're using, I suppose, with this technique. But we're just making a nice straightforward little cuff bangle today, which is going to sit really comfortably around your wrist. That's how the back's looking. Just do that so you can't see. And how the front's looking. Keeping that shape. Making sure they're nice and parallel. Pushing them down flat on the desk. I want them all sitting nicely next to each other. No major gaps between the beads. I'm just taking the next 3 off my strand. That's slightly moved, so I'm just going to bring it back down next to the beads. Those 3 wraps close to each other around the back. So my beads kind of fit in to those little channels or just sit neatly next to them. Hello, Phoenix Creations. How are you doing? She says, oh, I've caught the live. Hi, Nat. So have you all had a nice weekend? It was an incredibly quick weekend for me. But very busy putting bits and bobs together. Got some lovely tutorials coming up over the next month for you. So just by flattening between my thumb and my finger, just to keep those beads pinched into the middle. If I want to, I can just neaten up those wires at the top by just giving them a little pinch together. So they'll be in little groups. Hopefully you can see that okay. So it's just a nice neat little weave. So I'll add a few more rows on before we start to make the end spirals. Now you can see I've got a loop in my wire there. I don't want that. And it's very easy to get kinked, especially if you're using a long wire. So you can either straighten it out, and if it does snap, don't worry, just cut off and then attach your new one so it'll keep that continuity. 3 wraps around the top, 1 behind the back, so add 3 around the bottom. And then I just smooth it through with my fingers. Oh, thanks, Lisa. They're looking a little bit shabby, my nails, at the moment. They are sunflowers with a little bit of like a Van Gogh Starry Night at the back. They do match the beads really nicely, actually. That's not deliberate. But I chose sunflowers because, well, my father-in-law used to grow the tallest sunflowers. He's He's a farmer by nature, so he would grow all sorts of lovely things. But his cosmos were wonderful. He would always cut me sweet peas, and he would always grow massive sunflowers with his grandkids. So I decided that I would decorate my nails in honour of him. So that's why I've got my sunflowers. Plus, they're just a cheery, nice little flower, aren't they? They just make us feel, well, a little bit happier. I am longing for spring. I've got a few daffodils starting to kind of shoot up and snowdrops, but my front garden's full of bluebells. So I'm eagerly waiting for them to come out. I've had enough of the winter now. We've had snow and all sorts last month, so I'm ready for warmer weathers, brighter mornings. Just keep manipulating that so you've got it nice and straight. Keep getting a pop-up, trying to close it off. Thanks very much, Lisa. Phoenix says, my gran loves sweet peas. Funny, isn't it? Different flowers and different things remind you of different people. So, my garden probably won't look as lovely this summer because he usually used to grow the cosmos for me, start them off and then I could plant them. People would stop and say, oh, aren't they lovely? And I'd take all the credit. So I'm going to have to get myself a little bit more green-fingered. So just keep going with that until you've got the length that you want. I mean, at the moment, when I'm measuring, again, you can move them out so you've got roughly about 1 inch. I'm going to measure the length that I'm requiring just of the beads. I'm not going to be measuring this in terms of the length that I want for my bracelet. I'm going to be getting the majority of my length through the beaded section. So I'm just going to measure my beads against this. I'd like it to be 6 inches, ideally. But I do appreciate we are slightly running out of time. It's always the dilemma because it's a quick make. I don't want to rush through it and I want you to see a full finished project. So you will, because I'll show you the beginning and the end and all the middle bit because this is just repetitive. But I don't want to go too quick. I also think it can be quite repetitive just to watch me sliding on the beads in the same way. But I would suggest, take your time with it, enjoy it. It's quite a nice meditative, I suppose, practice because you're just at one with the beads and the wire. So you can practice your mindfulness while making if you want to. It's very relaxing. Sliding on. Again, these are wanting to taper down. So at this point, I'm just making sure it's fitting the size of the beads and it will open up to where it needs to be. I'll do a few more rows with this. I have gone again, a kink in my wire, so I will be cutting that bit off. Don't know whether you can see it as I pulled it tight. I don't think I'd be able to unwrap that now, so I'll probably just work up to that bit. Only because it will still be strong enough, I'm sure, but I just don't want any kind of sharper bits sticking up on that weave. I want to make sure it's a nice, comfortable wear. Ooh, Darlena says, I think I'm going to use my red beads to make this for Valentine's Day. I've been making a lot of jewellery for Valentine's Day. Well, this is it. You've got to, especially if you you sell your wonders, you need to make sure that you're looking at seasonal makes and what sells. I obviously with things going on, I've not really been doing that. I had loads of ideas of things I was going to make for Valentine's Day. But maybe I'll make some of them with you lot instead on a live. I've been making a lot of bracelets lately. So I made the celebrant a bracelet. Made a few. What have I been making for Totally Beads? I've done a couple of necklaces. I'm very excited about one that's coming up because it's all I'll say is beach vibes. It's extremely beach vibes. I think I'm desperate for a holiday, so I've been channeling that, I think, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. But not often that I make a proper themed piece for Totally Beads. But if you've got any little mermaids, or if you are yourself a little mermaid and you like a boho beach make, then stay tuned next month. Actually, I think I've scheduled it for the end of this month, for February now, aren't we? So I'm going to keep going with the length that I want. I'm going to add on my beads in exactly the same way each time. The sunshine's now pouring through, so I've got a dark shadow on my mat, but hopefully you can see that okay. So I'm just adding on my 4mm beads, same way each time, until I get the length that I want. When I've reached my length, let's see how we're doing. Now I'm going to leave it here. Again, I would do a few more rows. What I will do is I'll show you if you need to reattach a new wire. I'll do that. So if I've come to the end of my wire and I need to attach another length, I'm going to just cut off and then I'm going to tuck that end in, and I want to make sure that I tuck it so it finishes on the underneath if I can. I'm then just going to take the next length of wire that I'm wanting to attach and do exactly the same. So I've got my little tail end and I will wrap it 3 times again. And then I will trim off and I will tuck in. And then I can just carry on as normal. Now, because I haven't done my one around the back, I'll add that in now. But you're just going to be adding on exactly as you go. Just make sure that you're tucking in any of those little wire ends. So once you've got to the length that you are after, I'm going to cut off because I haven't got one channel without on the back here. So I'm going to finish as I've started. Wrap my beads on and just tuck in. Look at that little tail end. So if you can, try and get the tail end to sit on the inner side of the bracelet. And then I'm going to make sure that I've got my kind of starting size at about 1 inch. And I want them to be roughly the same size at each end. If they need adjusting, you can adjust them. I want to make sure my beads are nice and flat. So I'm going to kind of push them down with my fingers against the desk. I do apologise for that shadow. Just to make sure that they're all sitting nice and flush. And then I'm going to take whatever length I've started off here, that's about 1 inch, and I'm going to do the same about there because I'd like my curls to be the same size on each. So I'm just going to cut off any excess so I have the same on both sides. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try and move this over so stop that shadow a little bit. That's a bit better, isn't it? I'm then going to start trying to curl my ends. So I want those roughly the same. If I need to trim off, can do. And then I'm just going to curl my ends. So I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to curl the very tip all the way round. Now my tip when doing a curl is, you can see as I've started to curl that, I've got a tiny straight bit there. So I'm going to come in with my cutters and I'm just going to cut off barely a millimetre, if you can see. And it's just to cut off that straight bit. And then I'm going to come in again with my round nose pliers and I'm just going to curl that curl in on itself. Now it's really important when I'm creating that curl that it is sitting inside, because I don't want that to catch on anything. Once I've got that started, I can use my chain nose pliers or flat nose pliers just to keep turning that in. So it's nice and flat and flush and it's not going to catch on anything. And then I'm going to do the same. I'm going to turn the other wire in towards itself again. So I'm going to curl the very tip, cut off the straight part of the curl, just a tiny section, cover it over with my fingers when I'm cutting, just to make sure no ends are going to fly away. And I'm going to curl that down. So I want these curls to be roughly the same, but I want that curl in on itself nice and firmly. So you can do it with the round nose pliers or you can do it with chain nose pliers once you've got that started, whatever suits you. But I want those curls to be roughly the same and I want them to kind of butt up against the pearls. I'm just going to make sure that they're nice and flat. Now if I want to add a little bit of strength and rigidity to these, a pair of pliers will do. I'm just going to be pushing over the edges and just kind of giving it a little squeeze between the jaw of the pliers, and that will harden it. You do want to do that quite gently in a way though, because this wire that we're using here is coated, so it's copper, it's just coated in the silver. Also, if you want to, you can lay this on your hammering block. Now, I want to make sure I'm not hammering the pearls. I'm just going to hammer those little loops. So I'm just putting it up against the end so those pearls aren't in the way. So those pearls are butted up to my block. And I'm just going to do a little tap. You don't have to do this, but what that will do is it will harden that wire and that will make them a little bit more sturdy. Again, I want to make sure that it's all nice and flat and flush, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. So I come in with my round nose pliers, and if you've got the same length on each side, then you're going to create pretty much the same size curls at the end. So I'm just curling it in with the tip of my round nose pliers. I'm just going to trim off a tiny little bit in the centre of that curl. Back in with the round nose pliers, make sure that curl touches the side so it touches in on itself. And then once you've got it, you can keep that going down. Same on the other side. So I'm just taking the very tip of the round nose pliers where it's tapered, just to start that first initial bend, trimming off the tiny straight bit. Back in with the pliers and with those round nose, make sure that tip touches in on itself, and then you can continue with the round nose, but you might find using the flat nose, just make sure it all kind of turns. And I want that butted up to those beads, and again you just adjust if need be. So you want those curls to be flat. I've got another pair of pliers here. So if there's a slight twist on it, just make sure that they're parallel. This is a smaller bracelet than I would like. And again, if you need to, you can give them a little squish with the pliers or a little tap. So my curls on each side are pretty much even. And you can, play about with the shape. So if you want them to touch each other, you can kind of push them in so they kind of taper to the point that they're sitting close up against each other, whatever you want. And then it's just a case of shaping this now. So I tend to shape with my fingers. If you've got a tumbler, like a glass tumbler, a bracelet mandrel, whatever you've got, you can use. But I'm just going to start from the middle, and I'm just going to shape it around and put that gradual bend in it as you go. If you have got something cylindrical, it is probably the better thing to use. But I don't think I've got any. Oh, well, you've got a candle here. I'm just wandering around the room, aren't I? So here I've got a candle. Sarah Nelson, who makes gingerbread in the Lake District, or did in 18 something or other. Yeah, anything will do. You can just get that shape. But remember, when we are shaping, our wrist is not fully circular, it's oval. So all we're going to do is just wrap that around. Now, I'm just going to push that in. Actually, not a bad size for me. If you've done it longer, obviously these bits will reach closer, but you'll see those curves, and I will just flatten them out when I get a chance, just to make sure they're sitting nicely. But these curves are going to make sure that it's not digging into your skin. You've got no sharp edges there. It's nice and comfortable against the wrist. And because I'm using that wire, I can shape it to how I want. So it's not falling. If I've made it a little bit smaller, it's gripping my wrist nice. If you want it looser, then of course you can do it that way. So they're your bracelets today. They are the Genevieve cuff bracelets. They're £3.99. Each kit is making one bracelet up. They're really comfortable, make beautiful satin pearls in 4mm. We've got an amethyst, a golden olive, a lemon, a moss green, a vintage rose, and a violet. Each colour will come with a beautiful strand of these satin pearls, and then the wire to accompany it as well. So whether it's the silver or the gold, you've got 2 gauges of wire there, your 0.8 and your 0.3, which is your 20 gauge wire and your 28 gauge wire, and you're going to have enough to make one lovely bracelet. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you've enjoyed being with me. Darlena says, so beautiful. Thank you so much. Anastasia's wishing everybody a very blessed day. Jan saying, thank you, Natalie. Beautiful make as usual. Judith says, lovely bracelet. I really like the satin pearls. I do really like them too. Joanne's saying, lovely make. Thank you. Everyone's being lovely. Camille's given me a thumbs up and a heart. So I'm going to be with you on Wednesday. I'm making some lovely necklaces with you on Wednesday. Again, a really nice, straightforward make bead stringing. I'm using some seed beads, some spacers, and some beautiful beads, but I'll leave it there, and you can come and join me on Wednesday if you can. I hope you all have a lovely week, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye, everyone.